Have you ever wondered what hidden betrayals unfold behind the grand walls of luxury mansions? Meet Ethan Lancaster, a wealthy and influential entrepreneur whose life appears to be a picture of success. As the CEO of Lancaster Holdings, a powerful real estate and tech empire, Ethan enjoys an extravagant lifestyle filled with lavish parties, exclusive business deals, and high society connections. But beneath the surface, his perfect life is a facade, concealing a painful secret. His wife, Isabella Lancaster, a former elementary school teacher, had always been his biggest supporter. They met as college students at Stanford University, bonding over coffee-fueled study sessions and shared dreams of building a future together. Now at 34, Isabella was 6 months pregnant with their second child. She had embraced motherhood with unwavering devotion, cherishing every moment with their 4-year-old daughter, Olivia. With her warm smile and nurturing heart, Isabella made their Bel Air mansion feel like a true home. But home was the last place Ethan wanted to be. Night after night, he slipped away under the cover of darkness, leaving Isabella with lingering doubts and sleepless nights. At first, she dismissed his frequent absences as a necessary sacrifice for his career. But as the weeks dragged on, the lies became harder to ignore. The faint scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, the hushed phone calls, the late-night business meetings that never added up. Then the truth shattered her world. One evening, Isabella's younger sister, Valeria, called with devastating news. "I saw Ethan," she whispered urgently. He wasn't alone. A deep sense of dread settled in Isabella's chest. That night, she waited by the bedroom window, watching as Ethan's car disappeared down the long, winding driveway. She already knew she wouldn't sleep. Not tonight. Not ever again. The clock struck midnight, and with her heart pounding, she made her decision. No more excuses. No more waiting. Packing a suitcase in silence, she moved swiftly through the house, gathering Olivia's belongings with trembling hands. Every step felt surreal, as if she were watching someone else's life unravel. Ethan had abandoned their marriage long before tonight. He just never thought she would be the one to walk away first. When the front door swung open an hour later, Ethan was greeted with an empty hallway. The eerie stillness of the house sent a chill down his spine. Then his eyes landed on the letter left on the entryway table, a quiet goodbye that held more weight than any explosive argument ever could. For the first time, fear gripped him. Isabella was gone, and this time she wasn't coming back. Yet anyone paying close attention might have noticed subtle cracks forming in the glittery surface of Isabella's life. Ethan, at 37 years old and head of Lancaster Holdings, was frequently away on business trips, leaving his 34-year-old wife to face long, empty nights in their sprawling Bel Air mansion. Despite the devoted staff, housekeepers, a caring nanny, and a reliable driver, there was an emptiness no amount of service could fill. Isabella often dined alone at a vast table designed for 20, the echoing halls a constant reminder of her solitude. Each night, she anxiously awaited Ethan's text messages, confirming his safe arrival or explaining another urgent late conference call. The constant absence fostered an overwhelming sense of emotional isolation that gnawed at her heart. She began to recall the days when Ethan's eyes sparkled with love, and every glance made her feel cherished and complete. Back then, his affectionate gaze had made her world shine, and even their daughter Olivia's delighted cries whenever he returned home filled him with joy. But now, even the joyful sound of Olivia's laughter no longer ignited the same warmth in Ethan. Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that the man she once knew was gradually slipping away, his presence reduced to fleeting shadows and unexplained absences. Sometimes, when she found herself alone, Isabella discovered strange receipts tucked away in Ethan's belongings, bills from upscale restaurants they never visited together, and cryptic text messages that flashed briefly on his phone. These small details, like hidden fragments of a story, hurt her deeply. One evening, with trembling hands and a heavy heart, she gently asked him if everything was all right at work. With a casual brush of his shoulder, Ethan dismissed her concerns as typical stress for a busy executive, leaving her doubts unresolved. On one particularly tense night, Ethan received a sudden phone call and hurriedly announced that an emergency meeting had arisen in downtown Los Angeles at midnight. Isabella's heart pounded as she watched him leave. the urgency in his tone only deepening her apprehension. The house staff exchanged sympathetic glances, their eyes filled with silent concern whenever Ethan departed on these mysterious nocturnal journeys. That night, as the clock ticked toward midnight and the city's lights shimmered in the distance, Isabella's mind swirled with anxiety and sorrow. She realized that her perfect life is a facade, hiding the painful truth of betrayal. With each passing midnight meeting, the foundation of their marriage weakened, and Isabella felt the storm of heartbreak and resilience brewing inside her. She never imagined that the cracks in her life would widen so dramatically, but deep down, she knew that something had to change. The silent whispers of discontent and the taste of betrayal had set her on a path that would ultimately redefine her future, forcing her to confront a reality she had long tried to ignore. In that defining moment, Isabella vowed to reclaim her happiness and rebuild her world with newfound strength and clarity for a future. Isabella woke the next morning with a heavy heart. Sleep had eluded her after Ethan's late-night departure, leaving her tossing and turning beneath the silk sheets of their vast bed. A dull ache lingered in her chest, but she reminded herself that she needed proof before jumping to conclusions. After sending Olivia off to preschool, Isabella made her way to the breakfast room. The household staff, ever discreet, avoided looking directly at her, yet she could sense their quiet concern. Ethan, as expected, was nowhere to be found. He rarely was these days, especially after nights he claimed to be working late. She forced herself to eat, but nausea and anxiety made it nearly impossible. The pregnancy, already exhausting, seemed to drain her more with each passing day. Her back ached, her feet were constantly swollen, and her emotions felt heightened in ways she couldn't control. But what truly unsettled her wasn't the physical discomfort, it was the unsettling shifts in Ethan's behavior. Determined not to spiral into endless speculation, Isabella decided to visit her sister, Valeria, who lived just a short drive away. Valeria was the kind of person who never backed down from a challenge. She faced problems head-on, armed with a sharp mind and unwavering loyalty. As Isabella's driver pulled up to Valeria's home, a modest yet inviting place far removed from the cold grandeur of the Lancaster estate, she felt her shoulders relax for the first time in days. The sisters settled onto a soft cream-colored couch while Valeria's cat, Milo, perched on the armrest, his tail twitching as if he could sense Isabella's unease. "All right, spill it," Valeria said, handing Isabella a glass of water. "You look pale." Isabella took a steadying breath, but once she started speaking, the words came tumbling out. She told Valeria everything. Ethan's frequent absences, the midnight phone call, the unexplained receipts tucked into his pockets. She wanted to believe it was all in her head, a result of her pregnancy making her overly sensitive. But deep down, she knew better. Valeria's expression darkened. "Have you confronted him?" she asked, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. Isabella sighed, feeling the sting of unshed tears. "Yes, but he always brushes it off. He tells me I'm imagining things, that I'm just hormonal. And maybe I am. But something isn't right." Valeria tapped her chin, her sharp gaze unwavering. "You're not crazy, Bella. You're perceptive, and you know Ethan better than anyone. If you feel like something is off, trust your instincts. I've seen him at family gatherings. He barely looks up from his phone. And now you're finding receipts that don't make sense? That's not stress, that's something else." Though the conversation gave Isabella a momentary sense of validation, it didn't erase the gnawing unease in her heart. She could no longer ignore the signs. Something was wrong, and soon she would have no choice but to face the truth. Just having someone believe her was enough to ease the tightness in Isabella's chest, but the sense of dread never left. That very night, Ethan came home close to 2 a.m., offering nothing more than a vague excuse about extended negotiations with an overseas client. He peeled off his custom-tailored jacket, loosened his tie, and collapsed onto the bed, completely unaware that Isabella lay awake beside him, silent tears streaking her face. A few nights later, her worst fears were confirmed. She woke in the middle of the night to a soft hum, the faint sound of movement. Her breath caught as she turned to see Ethan slipping out of their bedroom door. The dim hallway lights cast long shadows as he moved, But Isabella didn't need full illumination to recognize the shape of him disappearing into the night. Rushing to the window, she pressed her palm against the cool glass. Watching as Ethan climbed into his midnight black Aston Martin, his silhouette stark against the glow of the moon. Without hesitation, he pulled out of the driveway, his car disappearing into the quiet streets of Bel Air, leaving no trace, no hesitation, no guilt. That image, his back turned to her, his departure without a second glance, cut through Isabella's heart like a blade. This was no business emergency. This was something else. And she was done sitting in the dark. By morning, her decision was made. Isabella called someone she never thought she would need. Gabriel Hayes, a private investigator recommended by Valeria's mutual friend. Valeria had once used him in a property dispute with an unscrupulous landlord, and his reputation for discretion was unmatched. Isabella never imagined she would stoop to hiring someone to spy on her own husband, but desperation had a way of silencing pride. When Gabriel arrived, he was calm, professional, and thorough. A stocky man with sharp, knowing eyes, he asked questions that made Isabella's pulse race. "How often does he leave at night?" Gabriel asked, jotting notes into a leather-bound notebook. "Do you notice any patterns? Does he have a personal assistant who might be covering for him?" Isabella answered as best she could, handing him photos of Ethan's Aston Martin, a list of his office locations, and the approximate times he typically vanished into the night. Gabriel closed his notebook with a quiet nod. "I understand the sensitivity of this situation," he said, his voice steady. "But I promise you this, whatever is happening, you'll get the truth." That night, Isabella paced the length of their bedroom, her mind racing with possibilities. But to her shock, Ethan came home at a reasonable hour, yawning as if he'd simply had a long day. No explanations, no apologies. She studied his face, searching for a flicker of guilt, a trace of remorse. But there was nothing, just a man who had perfected the art of deceit. The next morning, Isabella's phone buzzed with a series of messages from Gabriel. Each text sent a jolt of fear through her, tightening the anxiety in her chest. "I have something. Need more time to confirm." She could barely breathe. Every moment stretched unbearably long. Her thoughts drifted aimlessly, making it impossible to focus on her prenatal care or even eat. All she could do was wait for the inevitable. The day Gabriel would present her with the truth that would destroy everything she thought she knew. Within a week, he had gathered enough information to shake her already fragile world. He requested a meeting at a discreet cafe in West Hollywood, far from the prying eyes of their social circle. Isabella, desperate to avoid recognition, wore dark sunglasses and a simple navy blue dress that concealed her growing baby bump. As she slipped into a corner booth, Gabriel was already there, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry to have to do this," he said, placing a thick folder on the table. "But your suspicions were correct." Isabella's fingers trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were photos of Ethan, taken at high-end restaurants, outside a luxury condominium, and, most devastatingly, kissing a woman with long, chestnut-brown hair. The woman was younger than Isabella by a few years. Tall, elegant, and impeccably dressed. Gabriel hesitated before speaking again. "Her name is Vanessa Moreau. She's a marketing executive at one of Ethan's subsidiaries, an up-and-coming influencer who's often seen at exclusive industry events." Isabella's breath hitched. She traced the images with her fingertips, barely processing what she was seeing. "Where were these taken?" she asked, her voice hollow. Gabriel pointed at the photos. "This is a lounge in Beverly Hills, and this is the driveway of her condo in Century City. Based on surveillance, Ethan's been there 4 times this week, always after midnight. He stays for a few hours, then leaves around dawn." A deep nausea settled in Isabella's stomach. Her eyes locked onto one particular image, Ethan holding Vanessa's hand as they entered a rooftop bar. His face lit up with a smile Isabella hadn't seen in years. He looked relaxed, even happy. The pain hit instantly, sharp and visceral. Gabriel cleared his throat gently. "I can dig deeper if you want, but from a professional standpoint, you already have more than enough evidence." Isabella swallowed the lump in her throat. "No," she whispered. "This is enough." The drive home felt like a blur. A storm of emotions swirled within her: betrayal, heartbreak, anger, yet beneath it all was a quiet, chilling acceptance. Because now, there was no more room for doubt. This was real. It felt as if Isabella had stepped outside her own life, watching it unravel from a distance, powerless to change what she saw. That evening, Ethan returned home from yet another business meeting, his expression unreadable. But this time, Isabella was waiting for him. In the dimly lit living room, photographs were scattered across the glass coffee table. The second he stepped through the door, he froze, the color draining from his face. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from the upstairs nursery, the soft sound of Olivia's laughter echoed, a heartbreaking reminder of the life that was about to be shattered. How long? Isabella's voice was barely above a whisper, but the weight behind it was crushing. Ethan's eyes darted around the room, searching for a way out. A lie, an excuse, anything. Finally, he exhaled, shoulders sagging. A few months. His voice was hoarse. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. A few months? Isabella's breath hitched, her hands trembling. How long have you been lying to me? Sneaking out at night? Does she even know I'm pregnant? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, unable to meet her eyes. She knows, he muttered. It's complicated, Bella. Complicated. Isabella let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You are under so much stress, she repeated, voice thick with disbelief. And somehow cheating on your pregnant wife was your solution? She had expected him to fall to his knees, to plead for forgiveness, to swear this was a mistake. Instead, all he gave her were hollow justifications. Stress, a midlife crisis, a desperate need for excitement. Every word was a knife twisting in an already gaping wound. Her breaths turned ragged. One hand instinctively cradled her growing belly, as if shielding her unborn child from the destruction unfolding in front of her. Get out. Ethan's head snapped up, genuine shock flashing across his face, as if he hadn't anticipated this reaction. Isabella, let's talk about this, he urged, his voice edged with desperation. We can figure this out. She laughed again. A hollow, broken sound. Talk about what, Ethan? How you've spent months sneaking out in the middle of the night while I've been here, alone, carrying our child while you've been off living a double life? She gestured toward the door, her resolve hardening. Go to her. If that's where you want to be, don't let me stop you. I'm done. And so, Ethan left. Not far, just to the guest house on their estate. His pride wouldn't let him leave entirely, not from the home he still believed was rightfully his. But for Isabella, this night marked the beginning of the end. The illusions were gone. The mistress had a name, Vanessa Moreau. And now, she had a face. Her husband had a secret life. That fact haunted Isabella in the days that followed, leaving her in a daze of conflicting emotions. Ethan remained on the property, though now confined to the guest house. And the only reason Isabella managed to hold herself together was Olivia. Their 4-year-old daughter was too young to grasp why Daddy was suddenly living in a different part of the estate, but she sensed the change. She asked questions with the innocent curiosity of a child. Did Daddy do something bad? Why don't we eat breakfast together anymore? Every time, Isabella's heart clenched, but she forced a smile and whispered, We're just giving Daddy some space, sweetheart. She filled her days with distractions, prenatal checkups, lunch with Valeria, and the philanthropic commitments she had made months ago. But at night, when the house fell silent, she lay awake, replaying the last few months over and over like a broken record. She longed for the days when Ethan would return from a business trip, sweep her into his arms, and excite her with stories of multi-million-dollar deals sealed in Hong Kong or Tokyo. She missed the spontaneous weekend trips to Napa Valley, the laughter-filled wine tastings, and the quiet evenings curled up together, watching black and white films. Now, every time she saw him in the main house, whether to greet Olivia or make a phone call in the study, her chest tightened with emotions she could barely contain. Ethan, for his part, seemed reluctant to pack his things and leave entirely. As if staying in the guest house gave him some semblance of control over his fractured marriage and family. Isabella saw it clearly now. Ethan was no longer the man she had married. He cared more about preserving his reputation than repairing the damage he had done. Maybe, deep down, he did feel guilty, but not guilty enough to let go of Vanessa Moreau. One afternoon, while reading in the sunroom, as Olivia colored on a sketchpad beside her, Isabella overheard Ethan's voice echoing from the hallway. She tensed, expecting to hear him whispering to Vanessa. Instead, he was on the phone, speaking in a sharp, measured tone. "Richard, this deal needs to go through. I don't care what the board thinks. If we don't move fast, we lose everything." Richard Thompson, one of Ethan's most trusted business partners. Isabella recognized the strain in his voice. Ethan was feeling cornered, not just in his personal life, but in his professional dealings as well. She turned to Olivia, watching her small hands carefully fill a picture with color, blissfully unaware of the tension suffocating their home. For the first time, Isabella wondered if the best thing she could do for her daughter was to take her away from all of it, before the cracks in their family turned into something irreparable. 2 days later, Ethan cornered Isabella in the living room, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. The usual confidence in his posture had faded, replaced by something uncertain. "Isabella," he started, his voice strained. I think we need to talk about how to move forward." She folded her arms over her chest, steeling herself. "Move forward? I asked you to leave." Ethan's jaw tightened, frustration flickering in his dark eyes. "I can't just walk away from everything. My daughter, our unborn child, my business, it's all run from this property." His voice softened. "Believe it or not, I still love you, Bella." A bitter laugh almost escaped her lips, but she swallowed it down. "You love me so much you were sneaking around with another woman?" she said, voice sharp with pain. His gaze dropped for a moment. "I am confused. She is, a distraction, an escape. But it's not that simple." Isabella squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her fingers to the bridge of her nose. Inside her, their baby shifted, a tiny painful reminder that life was still moving forward, even as hers was falling apart. "It's simple to me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You made a choice, Ethan. You betrayed me. And you think I'm going to just stay here, pregnant and humiliated, so you can have your cake and eat it too?" She shook her head, her heart aching. "I may have once been that naive, but I'm done." Ethan took a step closer, his voice trembling slightly. "I want to be in our child's life, and in Olivia's. I don't want to lose my children." For a moment, Isabella saw a flicker of sincerity in his expression, a glimpse of the man she once loved. "I won't deny you your children," she whispered, blinking back tears. "But you've already lost me." The conversation ended there, abruptly, painfully. Ethan returned to the guest house, and Isabella was left standing alone in the mansion that now felt more like a prison. The household staff whispered about the growing tension, darting sympathetic glances at her as she passed through the halls. Needing to regain some sense of control, she started packing small things, Olivia's clothes, her own maternity wear. She didn't know if she was truly ready to leave, but she knew she needed a plan, a real one. It wasn't long before news of Ethan's affair spread. Maybe one of the staff had let something slip, or maybe Valeria had confided in a friend who then confided in someone else. Either way, Isabella's attempts to contain the damage were too late. Her parents, Richard and Eleanor Moreau, arrived from San Diego, visibly shaken. Her father's face was a mask of anger, while her mother's eyes brimmed with unshed tears. This was just the beginning of the storm. Isabella's father arrived in Los Angeles with fire in his eyes. A retired police officer, fiercely protective of his daughters, Richard Moreau nearly pounded on the guest house door, demanding an explanation from Ethan. It took everything in Isabella to keep him from escalating the situation further. Her mother, Eleanor, handled things differently. She sat beside Isabella for hours, stroking her hair as she cried, whispering words of comfort that did little to dull the pain. Meanwhile, Ethan's own parents, James and Vivian Lancaster, were outraged, not over their son's betrayal, but over the scandal threatening their name. James, a staunch traditionalist, condemned Ethan's actions with cold disappointment. Vivian, her voice trembling with suppressed anger, attempted to broker a reconciliation. For the Lancasters, the illusion of a perfect family was everything, and Ethan's affair with an employee was the worst kind of public relations disaster. As their families clashed behind closed doors, Vanessa Moreau made her presence known in the media. Paparazzi photos surfaced online, capturing her and Ethan together in Beverly Hills, igniting a wildfire of speculation. Every time Isabella saw Vanessa's name or face plastered across social media, paired with sensationalized headlines, her stomach twisted. Is Ethan Lancaster trading his marriage for a younger flame? Pregnant wife left alone. Scandal deepens for the Lancaster family. But what cut the deepest was Ethan's weak defense of their marriage. Lancaster Holdings issued a sterile press release: "We do not comment on personal matters." On his own social media, Ethan continued business as usual, carefully curated photos of corporate events, charity fundraisers, and high-profile deals. No mention of the chaos unraveling at home. Isabella realized then that she was utterly alone in this battle. Her only solace came from Olivia, who remained blissfully unaware of the complexities and cruelty of adult life. Every night, as Isabella tucked her daughter into bed, she read her a fairy tale or sang a lullaby, desperate to protect what little innocence remained in their world. But stress was creeping in, its effects undeniable. At her next prenatal checkup, Dr. Patel studied Isabella carefully, concern etched into her features. "Your blood pressure is elevated," she said gently, adjusting the stethoscope around her neck. "Stress can lead to complications. You need to rest, Mrs. Lancaster." Isabella forced a smile, but deep down, she knew rest was impossible. Her marriage was over. She just had to find the strength to walk away. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of the advice. How could she possibly rest when her world was crumbling beneath her? Returning home from the clinic, Isabella found Ethan pacing in the foyer, frustration tightening his sharp features. "We need to talk," he said, his voice tense. "I'm not in the mood to hear your excuses," Isabella replied, sidestepping him. Ethan reached out, his hand brushing her arm, a touch that once brought comfort but now sent a chill down her spine. "It's about the board of Lancaster Holdings. They're concerned the scandal will damage our image. They want me to address the rumors publicly." Isabella turned to face him, her expression cold. "Oh, so now you care about appearances?" she said, voice laced with bitterness. "You didn't care when you were sneaking around with Vanessa, but suddenly, now that your empire is at risk, you're worried?" Ethan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "You think I'm proud of what I've done? I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Isabella repeated, her tone cutting. "Sneaking out in the middle of the night, lying to my face, seeing the same woman for months. That's not a mistake, Ethan. That's a choice." He opened his mouth as if to argue, but found no words. She brushed past him, heading for the stairs, but a sudden wave of dizziness overtook her. Gripping the banister, she closed her eyes, willing her heart to slow down. Stress was the last thing she needed right now. As the days dragged on, the standoff continued. Ethan remained on the estate while Isabella confined herself to the bedroom, shielding Olivia from the storm unraveling around them. Then, one night, she heard Ethan's voice rising from the living room. Curious, she crept out, pausing just beyond the doorway. "I told you this is complicated," Ethan snapped into the phone, pacing furiously. "I can't just announce our relationship. Not now. My family, my wife, everything is in turmoil." A cold realization settled over Isabella. Ethan wasn't trying to mend things. He wasn't even fighting for their marriage. He was trapped, desperate to protect his reputation, torn between keeping her from leaving and placating Vanessa, whose ambitions clearly overshadowed her discretion. A bitter laugh escaped her lips before she could stop it. The man she once trusted, the man who had promised her forever, was now a stranger, a prisoner of his own lies. She turned away and walked into Olivia's room, where her daughter lay fast asleep, her small chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. That night, as Isabella sat beside Olivia's bed, watching her daughter dream, she made a silent vow. No more waiting, no more indecision. The moment she found the strength, she was leaving. Watching her child's serene face and sleep, Isabella knew she had reached her limit. With only a few months left until her baby's arrival, she refused to bring another life into this suffocating environment. She would leave, with or without Ethan's approval. Early the next morning, Isabella awoke with a newfound determination. She placed calls to her parents and Valeria, explaining that she intended to leave Ethan, at least for now, and needed somewhere stable to stay. Valeria immediately offered her home, but Isabella hesitated. A two-bedroom bungalow would feel cramped with a newborn. Her parents' home in San Diego, however, had more space, a place where she and her children could find sanctuary while she figured out her next steps. She moved swiftly, gathering important documents: her marriage certificate, Olivia's birth certificate, medical records, along with enough clothes for herself and her daughter to last a few weeks. Then, she packed a small suitcase of baby items she had been collecting, tiny onesies, soft blankets, a few plush toys. As she folded a pale blue swaddle, the weight of it all crashed down on her. Her unborn child would be entering a world already broken. To her surprise, Ethan wasn't in the guest house that morning. A staff member casually mentioned that he had left early for an important meeting. Isabella let out a hollow laugh. Maybe he was truly handling business, or maybe he was at Vanessa's condo. Either way, she no longer cared. By mid-afternoon, her plan was in motion. She and Olivia would travel to San Diego with Valeria, who had driven over the moment she received Isabella's call. Just as they were loading suitcases into the car, a sleek Aston Martin pulled up. Ethan stepped out, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm as he took in the sight of his wife and daughter preparing to leave. "What's going on?" he demanded, striding toward them. "Where are you taking Olivia?" Isabella turned to her daughter. "Sweetheart, get in the car, okay?" she said softly, not wanting Olivia to witness the confrontation that was about to unfold. Only when the car door closed behind her did Isabella lift her gaze to Ethan, her voice steady. "I'm leaving." Every syllable carried the weight of finality. "I need space. I can't do this anymore." Panic flashed in Ethan's eyes. "You can't just take my daughter away from me. We need to talk about custody, about living arrangements." She shook her head. "We're not talking about anything until I'm somewhere I can actually breathe, somewhere I'm not drowning in heartbreak. If you want to discuss anything, talk to my lawyer." She placed a hand on the car door, bracing herself for the moment she would finally drive away. This was it. There was no turning back. Isabella placed a protective hand over her belly. "And this baby comes with me." Ethan stepped closer, his gaze pleading. The same eyes that once held nothing but love now searched hers for a lifeline. "Isabella, I know I've been an idiot. I'm trying to figure things out. Don't do anything rash." "Rash?" A humorless laugh escaped her lips. "This isn't rash, Ethan. This is months, maybe even years of betrayal, secrets, lies, late-night rendezvous." She shook her head, her voice trembling with fury. "I gave you my heart, my trust, and you threw it away." She took a steady breath, her pulse pounding. "I don't care about your confusion anymore. I care about my children's well-being." For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw tears in his eyes, but the memory of him kissing Vanessa outside that condo in Century City crashed into her mind. Her resolve hardened. Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Let's be civil for Olivia's sake," she said, voice softer but unwavering. "But I will not be disrespected." With that, she climbed into the passenger seat beside Valeria. Ethan stood frozen, fists clenched at his sides, watching as they pulled away. Isabella refused to look back, her eyes fixed on Olivia's cherubic face in the rearview mirror. The little girl hummed a nursery rhyme, blissfully unaware that her mother had just made a life-altering decision. Fear, sorrow, relief. Isabella's heart pounded as she processed the emotions flooding her. She was walking away from the life she had painstakingly built, leaving behind the man she had once believed in. But she was also freeing herself from the shackles of betrayal. Whatever it took, she would protect her children. Arriving at her parents' home in San Diego felt like stepping into another world. The cozy single-story house had a well-tended garden, a stark contrast to the cold, sprawling mansion she had left behind. Her parents, Richard and Eleanor Moreau, welcomed her with open arms, ushering her into the guest bedroom they had prepared. Olivia squealed with delight upon discovering a basket of toys and coloring books, a thoughtful gesture from her grandparents to make her feel at home. Despite their warmth, as Isabella unpacked her suitcase, a wave of conflicting emotions hit her. She sank onto the bed, pressing a hand to her belly, fighting back tears. She was grateful for their support, for a safe place to land, but the overwhelming sense of failure lingered. This wasn't the life she had envisioned. She had once dreamed of raising her children in a loving home, married to a man she thought would stand by her side. Now she had to rewrite that vision entirely. Raising her children in a luxurious mansion, only to find herself back in her childhood home, heartbroken and adrift, was something Isabella never imagined. Seeing her sister's distress, Valeria quietly shut the bedroom door and sat beside her. "Hey," she said softly. "You're not alone, Bella. Mom and Dad have your back. I have your back. And you're doing the right thing, for Olivia and the baby. Isabella nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I just never thought I'd be here, she murmured. Ethan and I built a life together. A part of me still can't believe I left. Valeria placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You had to. You weren't safe there, emotionally or psychologically, and the baby needs a stress-free environment. Later that afternoon, Isabella spoke privately with her father, Richard. With his usual gruff demeanor, he tried to keep his anger toward Ethan in check. Instead, he offered something unexpected: legal advice. I have a friend, Mark Bennett, Richard said in a measured tone. He's a family law attorney here in San Diego. He'll help you figure out custody, financial support, everything. Isabella's head spun. She had never truly considered how complicated a potential divorce could be. Ethan might fight me, she said quietly. Not because he wants me back, but because he won't let his public image take a hit. He'll try to spin it. Or worse, he'll drown me in legal fees. Her father's jaw tightened. Then we'll be ready. You're my daughter. I'll do everything in my power to protect you. Encouraged by her parents' support, Isabella scheduled a preliminary consultation with Mark. Over the phone, he provided her with a list of essential documents: financial records, bank statements, property deeds, prenuptial agreements, if any. She realized then how little she truly knew about Ethan's wealth. His fortune was woven through countless corporate entities, making the idea of untangling finances overwhelming. But there was no turning back now. Meanwhile, Olivia adjusted surprisingly well to her new surroundings. Maybe it was the excitement of being with grandparents who adored her, or maybe the innocence of childhood made transitions easier. Every night, Olivia insisted on reading the same picture book, Goodnight Moon, just as they had back home. The routine was a small, comforting reminder that some things hadn't changed. As the days stretched into a week, Ethan's calls became more frequent. Isabella, with her doctor's guidance, had decided to shield herself from stress as much as possible, but she allowed Olivia to speak to her father over video calls, monitoring each interaction carefully. She watched, silent and detached, as Ethan tried to act like nothing had changed. But everything had. From a distance, Isabella watched as Olivia chatted excitedly about her new bedroom and the fun she was having with Grandpa Richard. Ethan had made several attempts to speak with Isabella directly, but she remained firm. She would only communicate through text or email, strictly regarding Olivia's well-being. Still, curiosity gnawed at her. The urge to check social media for any sign of Ethan and Vanessa was strong, but she resisted. She refused to reopen wounds that were finally beginning to heal. Late one afternoon, an unexpected call came from an old friend, Miranda Wells, who worked in media relations for one of Ethan's philanthropic initiatives. Hey Bella, Miranda said hesitantly. I just wanted you to know, there's been some chatter about Ethan and Vanessa showing up together at a black tie event last night. Photos are circulating. I'm so sorry. Isabella swallowed hard, her heart clenching. She thanked Miranda for letting her know, though the words felt hollow. She had left Ethan, but hearing that he was already parading around with Vanessa so openly still stung in a way she hadn't expected. She forced herself to focus on her new reality, preparing for the baby, ensuring Olivia remained carefree, and forging a path forward with legal counsel. Yet Ethan's presence lingered like a storm cloud, looming over her every step. 2 weeks after arriving in San Diego, Isabella finally met Mark Bennett in person. The tall, soft-spoken attorney exuded confidence and understanding. They sat in his tastefully decorated office, a wall of law books towering behind him. Isabella clutched a folder of documents she had managed to take from the mansion. Mark flipped through the paperwork. Given the evidence of infidelity, you could file for divorce on grounds of adultery. But California is a no-fault divorce state, so the affair won't necessarily grant you a better settlement. However, it could influence spousal support in custody, especially if Ethan's behavior impacts the children's well-being. Isabella nodded, a wave of nerves tightening her chest. Ethan is a millionaire, maybe even a billionaire if you consider the entire conglomerate. I'm not trying to be greedy, but I need to ensure Olivia and the baby's future is secure. Mark removed his reading glasses and leaned forward. Understandable. First, we'll request full financial disclosures. Ethan is legally required to provide details on his assets, income, and debts. As for custody, we'll propose a parenting plan that prioritizes the children's best interests. Isabella inhaled deeply. He'll fight me. He won't let me go easily. Mark's expression remained calm. Then we'll be ready for that too. His pride. Well, you know how it is with powerful men, Mark said with a reassuring smile. We'll handle it. In the meantime, focus on your health and the pregnancy. Let me take care of the legal complexities. That evening, Isabella lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the full weight of her decision. She was stepping onto a battlefield where Ethan had every advantage: wealth, connections, a carefully curated public image. But despite the odds, she knew she was doing the right thing. Her children deserved a mother who was whole, not shattered by betrayal. Ethan's reaction to the legal papers came swiftly. Within a week of filing, Isabella received a flood of texts, swinging between anger and regret. One moment, he was lashing out, accusing her of overreacting. The next, he was begging for another chance. She found it increasingly difficult to navigate his emotional shifts. During one of Olivia's scheduled video calls, Ethan suddenly requested to speak with her directly. Isabella hesitated, but finally agreed. His face filled the screen, eyes desperate, frustration etched into his features. How can you drag us into court? He demanded, his voice trembling with barely contained anger. We have a child together, another on the way. We should work this out amicably. Do you really want Olivia growing up in a broken home? Heat rose to Isabella's cheeks, her fury barely restrained. It was already broken when you decided to have an affair, Ethan, she said, her voice steady but sharp. I'm not the one who destroyed our marriage. We tried talking, but you never let go of Vanessa. Don't blame me for doing what I have to do. He ran a hand over his face, sighing. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The business is in a precarious position. The board is on edge about the scandal. I'm trying to keep everything from falling apart. A bitter laugh escaped Isabella before she could stop it. And what do you think I'm doing, Ethan? I'm pregnant, alone, and trying to build a stable life for our children, away from the chaos you created. They stared at each other through the screen, the silence crackling with unresolved tension. Finally, Ethan ended the call without another word. Isabella sat still, hands trembling. Once, she had seen Ethan as her knight in shining armor. Now, he was just a man desperate to control a narrative he could no longer manage. Weeks stretched into months, and her pregnancy progressed. Each day brought new challenges: legal battles, communication through lawyers, and the emotional toll of severing a marriage she had nurtured for nearly a decade. But despite the exhaustion, Isabella knew one thing with certainty: she would never go back. Yet amid the turmoil, Isabella found unexpected sources of strength. She reconnected with old friends in San Diego and began volunteering at a local community center, a place her mother often visited. Even in the final weeks of her pregnancy, she helped organize children's reading programs and assisted with basic childcare. The laughter of kids brought a sense of warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. It reminded her of the rewarding work she once loved as a teacher. She also found support in a small prenatal yoga group, a safe space where women from all walks of life gathered: single mothers, working moms, first-time mothers in their 40s. For the first time in months, Isabella didn't feel so alone. When she confided in a fellow expectant mother, Lucy Martinez, about Ethan's affair and the exhausting legal battle, Lucy squeezed her hand gently. "You'll get through this," she said with a reassuring smile. "Your baby will be stronger because you refused to be broken." Days before her due date, Isabella received an unexpected call from Mark. "Good news," he said, sounding relieved. "Ethan's team just sent an offer for an interim custody and support agreement. It's not final, but at least financially, it looks like he's cooperating." Her hand trembled slightly as she held the phone. That's progress. They're proposing joint legal custody for Olivia, with you retaining primary physical custody. Ethan wants visitation rights, which can be arranged for weekends or scheduled visits in San Diego. He's also agreed to cover all medical expenses for your pregnancy and provide child support. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't perfect, and there was still an entire legal battle ahead, but at least Ethan was taking responsibility. A small spark of hope ignited within her. If nothing else, he would remain a present father to Olivia and the baby. That evening, she updated her parents. Richard nodded, his usual stern expression softening with approval. Even if he's doing it to save face or protect his business, it's still a win for you and the kids. And for once, Isabella couldn't argue. A cautious sense of optimism settled over her. She knew the hardest part was still ahead. Giving birth without a husband by her side, navigating the emotional trials of single motherhood. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself a sliver of hope. Because she was no longer waiting for someone to save her. She was saving herself. Isabella imagined the moment she would hold her newborn in her arms, free from the lies that had once suffocated her spirit. Late one night, just days before her due date, her phone buzzed. Ethan. She hesitated, heart pounding, before picking up. "I'm in San Diego," he said, "at a hotel near your parents' place. I need to see you, please." Her mind raced. "Why?" she asked, gripping the phone tighter. "I need to apologize, properly." Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a small cafe that stayed open late. It was a short drive from her parents' house, and though she was heavily pregnant, she felt she needed this final face-to-face conversation before the baby arrived. When she arrived, Ethan was already seated at a corner table, a cup of coffee in hand. He stood immediately, offering to help her sit. She refused, lowering herself carefully into the chair. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. She took in his appearance, thinner, dark circles under his eyes, a man unraveling under the weight of his own mistakes. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Bella, you look ready to pop," he said awkwardly, a half smile on his lips. She pressed her lips together. "I'm due any day now." He exhaled, running a hand over his coffee mug. "Listen, I'm sorry for everything. I know that sounds hollow, but I need you to know I regret hurting you." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "What do you want from me, Ethan?" He swallowed hard. "Vanessa and I are over. I ended it weeks ago. I realized I was using her as an escape, and it wasn't fair, to her or to you." Isabella raised an eyebrow. "And what? You want a medal? You chose her over me when it mattered." A flash of sorrow crossed his face. "I deserve that. But it's not just guilt, Bella. I still love you, and I hate that it took losing you to realize how much I was throwing away." She felt a pang in her chest, a faint echo of the love she once had for him. "What you're losing?" she repeated, voice shaking. "Ethan, sometimes we break things so badly they can't be fixed. Love alone isn't enough when trust is gone." He reached across the table, hesitating before resting a hand over hers. "Isabella, I'm not expecting." She pulled her hand away. "You don't get to expect anything from me anymore." The weight of her words settled between them like a wall, one he could no longer break through. "I'm not asking you to take me back," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But please, let me be there for you, for the baby. Let me at least try to make amends." For a long moment, Isabella gazed at him, memories flashing through her mind. Their wedding day under the California sun, Olivia's birth, the night spent dreaming of the future they would build together. His betrayal had tainted those memories, but it hadn't erased them completely. She withdrew her hand, her voice steady but distant. "I'm glad you're taking responsibility," she said, "but I'm not ready to forgive you. I don't know if I ever will. What I do know is that our children deserve a father who's present and honest. For their sake, I'm willing to work out a civil arrangement." Ethan nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you," he whispered. That night, they parted with a quiet understanding, one that acknowledged their relationship had changed beyond repair. 2 days later, in the early morning hours, Isabella went into labor. Her parents rushed her to the hospital, with Valeria arriving soon after to offer comforting words and a steady presence. Contractions gripped her body in waves of pain, and she clutched Valeria's hand, beads of sweat rolling down her forehead. She cried out as each contraction hit, the physical agony intertwining with the emotional weight of this moment. After hours of labor, Isabella gave birth to a healthy baby boy. A flood of relief and overwhelming love washed over her, momentarily pushing aside the heartbreak she had carried for months. Word reached Ethan, who arrived at the hospital, breathless and disheveled, shortly after their son was born. Isabella was still in the delivery room, exhausted but cradling her newborn, when Ethan stepped in. He paused at the threshold, his eyes brimming with emotions she hadn't seen in years. She studied his face, seeing something raw and unguarded, a vulnerability that had long been buried beneath his pride. With a hesitant nod, she allowed him to step closer. Ethan approached the bedside, gazing down at his son. Awe and regret flickered across his features as he carefully reached out, his hands trembling. Isabella hesitated, then slowly handed him the baby. In that silent, fragile truce, they both acknowledged the new life they had created, the unbreakable bond that would tie them together, even if their marriage was beyond saving. She took a trembling breath, her heart aching with bittersweet finality. Isabella didn't know what the future held, whether the divorce would be finalized or if Ethan would truly change. But for now, she focused on what mattered most, the health of her children and her own newfound strength. She had walked away from a mansion and a lifestyle many dreamed of, but she had also escaped a web of lies. In her arms, she held the greatest reason to believe that better days lay ahead. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of love, betrayal, and resilience. Isabella's story proves that even in the face of heartbreak, a person can reclaim their self-worth and protect what truly matters: family, dignity, and emotional well-being. We witnessed how one woman chose independence, seeking refuge with loved ones and rebuilding her life while preparing to welcome a new baby. Ethan's actions remind us that trust, once broken, is difficult to mend. Yet even in the darkest moments, glimpses of redemption and hope can still appear. If Isabella's story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories of resilience and empowerment to life. Stay tuned for our next story, because true strength is often born from life's hardest trials. Isabella didn't know what the future held, whether the divorce would be finalized or if Ethan would truly change. But for now, she focused on what mattered most: the health of her children and her own newfound strength. She had walked away from a mansion and a lifestyle many dreamed of, but she had also escaped a web of lies. In her arms, she held the greatest reason to believe that better days lay ahead. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of love, betrayal, and resilience. Isabella's story proves that even in the face of heartbreak, a person can reclaim their self-worth and protect what truly matters: family, dignity, and emotional well-being. We witnessed how one woman chose independence, seeking refuge with loved ones and rebuilding her life while preparing to welcome a new baby. Ethan's actions remind us that trust, once broken, is difficult to mend. Yet, even in the darkest moments, glimpses of redemption and hope can still appear. If Isabella's story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories of resilience and empowerment to life. Stay tuned for our next story, because true strength is often born from life's hardest trials.